Is that
Yeah,
you? Look.
it is. So, yeah, I thought I would sort of start off with this. I think I know everybody on the call now anyway. I see Adam's popped in. Um, I suppose, as from what you sort of said earlier, Mary, I sort of take us a sort of different way that we would like to see how much the topper scene and coaching with toppers has changed in the last couple of years.
Hmm.
I know it's been a while since I suppose certainly Adam and myself came through this squad. But I was surprised actually how much it has changed since going back in good and bad ways. I mean, there's certainly a lot of work, but yeah, so that was me 2011. I think it's Adam Farmer to the left. I don't know who else is on there, but I'm sure you can see yourself. Um, Not gonna last too long, but we'll go through this. Just have a few different things to chat about. I was obviously I was working with the squads for 4 years now, something like that. Can't remember. And I've been on lead for the last two. There are peaks and troughs, and we are at the moment in a bit of a trough. I suppose this is why I don't want the the top receivers to be in this call. There is a bit of a trough since what we've had previously, and it'll come back. We're seeing signs of it starting to come back, and it always happens whenever you have a good group of people that come through, then they leave, and everybody else goes with them because they don't want to be left behind in a cohort. Um, so that's sort of what's happening, and that has been massively accentuated from COVID. So with COVID, we had a lot of sailing that wasn't getting done. We were going through um, a lot of time when these kids haven't had their proper foundation set at club level. Um, and even if I talk to mom, if you talk to anybody, mom's teacher, by the way, I should probably point that out, or any teachers in school, we're seeing the same sort of issues, or not issues, learning changes that we'll have to bring in. So that's attention spans and attitude changes. Now, the attention span is shorter. It's much shorter than it used to be. Certainly from even when I started properly coaching to it is now, and that's part of how we're consuming more media and lots of things with schools. So it's an interesting change. Um, and then the attitude changes are different as well. They have a lot of a lot of them aren't fully invested into sailing itself. It can be rugby, hockey, whatever, and they're seeing as they have a lot of different sports they can do. So they're sort of hedging bets for a while and seeing what happens. So there's not necessarily the one mentality, one focus attitude we used to see. The old Dave Cockrell acronym, keep it simple, sunshine. Uh, it's a simple boat. It's a simple item to teach, which is why we have it from ground level up. And it's important to, especially with this cohort, to make a good foundation of the basics, which we would have had previously from clubs, but because of COVID, it's sort of knocked that out of sync a wee bit. Um, the way we are teaching this content then has also slightly changed. So whenever we went through squads previously, and in years, and certainly when before the 2020s, it was always been a set standard um, uh, protocol you would have at the start of the year. It would be very focused on boat handling. At the end of the year, it would be strategy and tactics. And that worked up until a certain extent because they like consuming their coaching styles, all that in a much more defined, shorter package. What we're now doing is we're having a section of each of those per squad weekend. So when we can build up that foundation through the year and quick changes in their activity keeps our set attention span. Because if we start doing an entire weekend of strategy, by the end of it, they're not going to realize they've done strategy and their golden nugget will be leeward mark around it or something silly. Then it's a question of why we're doing it at all. So I'll get them to come in. We'll set out, our conditions because for the day, so what the wind speed is, tide speed is, we'll add in a bit of theory that we may see like in your DI course, because that's just as important. And then we'll go on to a theory topic. It could be anything from clouds to a kicker, how it works. And then we'll go on to something that we've had more recently. It's an online warm up, on land warm up, sorry, or on land activity. Um, a lot of people have the assumption that this is all about warming the body up, but it's actually more to do with the mind because whenever they start doing this, it's more about the social aspects, more about the leadership aspect, communication aspect. So they're switched on in that aspect first before they even go on to the slipway to do their on the water warm up. So that can be anything from like a stationary drills to actually getting up and playing 40-40 or whatever they call it now. I have no idea. And then moving on to underwater stuff where it's more important for me than the exercises is the initial one. So we'll spend half an hour on this easy. It's not really warm up anymore. It's a first exercise. And it sort of focuses on three things: the core, getting the core activated. Big thing is improving boat handling skills. And for me, the most important one is adding an aspect of a bit of mayhem, a bit of panic, something to get their mind switched on first and to get smiling, a bit of enthusiasm, which is the hardest bit to do in a winter whenever everything's cold. I do have an example of this at East Down, featuring the younger Kelly as well. So this was we accidentally put our warm-up drill in a channel coming out of East Down, which reaches 7 knots in some parts where it flows out. And we lost a marker buoy that day. But anyway, so this is just, we decided, right, we'll keep doing this because it creates a bit of interest. It creates a bit of, it gets them smiling a wee bit because you can see that the tide is, oh crap, the tide is moving quite quickly. Hopefully you can't hear my audio. I just realized it's recorded in my office while it's been doing it. So that's sort of getting them into the mood a bit more, and we have learning points so we can come out from this even then because they are practicing mark roundings, items like that. The boat itself has also changed, so we're not seeing changes in scores, and we're seeing changes in the boat. So there's 7 main controls, or 8 main controls now. We always used to say there were the 3 main ones, but we're trying to broaden that out a wee bit. You got the main 3: kicker, down haul, out haul. Simple enough. Main sheet is a control, whether we like to think of it or not, it is one. And then, in my opinion, the most important bit of the boat, the traveller. And then we have leech line and foot line. And previously, we wouldn't have concentrated on those perhaps as much, but for different reasons, we're starting to look at them more. And that's tending to be because the sail quality of topper is degrading. The cuts are degrading and the material isn't as good as it possibly was in the past. That's my own opinion. I mean, I'm sure different people have their own. But that's why we're trying to teach that leash lines and foot lines are more important because they allow us to change our sail shape to keep it as new as possible. So we can actually use the controls properly. And then toe strap is the outlier because realistically they should start looking at having adjustable toe straps. How do you lock yourself in the boat if it's too loose? Kicker topper in 2021, 2020, something like that, I can't remember, brought in a new style of kicker. It is now a 6-to-1 rather than a 3-to-1.
Looks expensive.
So it's interesting because this, can you see laser pointer? Pointer off, there we go. This section here is basically what's new, and you can add that to any kicker. That bit of Dyneema costs 40 quid on its own because it has to have that stamp on it. So you can't sail with a different bit of Dyneema. It has to be one with a topper stamp on it.
Wow.
The reason they're saying this is because that Dyneema is supposedly the correct length, so that it can't be pulled on any harder than it will snap a new boom. Right. In theory. I'm not sure. I'm sure most of us could give it a good go and snap on a new boom, even with that bit of Dyneema. But that's what they're saying. So to actually have this component, we need to have a bit of Dyneema. Now, it does help, right? That we're having the kids who previously couldn't have pulled that on can now pull it on. The difficulty then is getting it off. And previously, I'm not sure, maybe I don't even remember this from a while ago, we had the spin lock plates. Yeah, I had one. They made such a difference. They're not made just as much, but they would have been one of those quick release plates that come on the ball with the kicker. And that means whenever we go to take it off, it's like a flicking the light switch rather than actually having to put the momentum on to get out of the jammer. And that really makes a difference. There are other aspects of this we'll get onto in a moment why I think this design's a wee bit flawed in itself. But kicker, I'm not going to teach you to suck eggs in this one. we're really back to basics because they're not, we need them to be consistent before we can do anything. Two settings, upwind, we bend the boom. Doesn't matter how heavy or light it is, the boom should be bent. How do we check that? The boom should go horizontally out and not up. Similar to laser, similar to most single-handed boats that are have no shrouds. And downwind, we're doing it to take up tension on a bit more, because if we don't have that, it becomes very difficult and we end up with sort of like a death roll scenario. Topper haven't changed the downhaul in years, which is good, and bad at the same time. So still in 6-1. This was the only image I could find online of a topper downhaul. Normally we would have a secondary line to this, a carbine up here, but I couldn't find a picture of one. This has been changed so a secondary line no longer exists, which in my opinion is only a benefit because it's not necessary. The idea of it was that in light winds you could change the length of that so that the blocks are smaller, but really in heavy winds you need to have the full length of the downhaul from top to bottom, because if you don't, there's too much stress on those ropes and there's too much crossover that it causes really difficult to pull on. The new downhauls, brand new downhauls, obviously made by Harkin, have a plate just like this and this cleat. So what I'm suggesting for a lot of kids, especially when they're smaller, to do is to get rid of this cleat and inverse it and put a smaller one on the bottom. If you look at this properly, you'll see that cleat is probably a good 3-4 centimeters high with a curved back fair lead, which is a bit of a silly idea when it comes to a topper because you're only pulling in one direction. It's not like a big boat where you're pulling it forwards or you're pulling it sideways. We want a solution where we can pull it on directly from anywhere in the boat. And the only, we don't need anything like that. We can have a very small fair lead and we can have a very small cleat to get the same sort of benefit. And why upside down? Because they are now putting carbine on a bit like a shackle on the bottom of the cleat here, which means when they put it on or off, the actual shackle moves around on that. So instead of pulling rope, they're now pulling this entire downhaul out of the mast, which massively reduces the effectiveness of that purchase. So what we're saying is we take that cleat off, we make it smaller, we put it onto the bottom, so that when they pull it on, they're pulling at one single angle. And when they go to let it off, they go in forwards, putting their hand on like that, and then going bang on the rope to get it off. Because if they don't, they're going to try and pull that forwards. And as they pull that forwards, the entire downhaul is going to come forward with it. And then, well, really, you're not going to get it off in a panic. Downhaul adjustment, very simple. Light winds, we have none, ever. Medium, we have enough to take speed creases out. What I mean by speed creases are, if we see, look how we look at Zoe's sail, there you can see there's creases starting to appear here. Now, they're not speed creases, I say that's just more a rolled badly sail. But you'll see, especially past those numbers, we get these large creases. We pull on the downhaul enough to get those out. And if we want to, we can release it or keep it pleated. It doesn't really matter that much. Speed creases aren't bad for the boat. It's just a crease in the sail. It's grand. But if we want to set up our downhaul according to the sail, we look at it in terms of that. Heavy wind, we do as much as possible because none of these kids are ever going to be fit enough in toppers to be able to hike for 20 minutes upwind flat, if we're being honest with ourselves. As much as you say fitness is important. And then downwind, we never put a kicker on, a downhaul on. Creates mass bend in the wrong direction and it's death roll territory. Outhaul is, I think, possibly the control that matters the least. The next sort of bit is a wee bit more controversial. So a couple of years ago, there was a wee incident at Ballyhome, I think it was, where somebody's hair got stuck in the hook at the end of the boom ponytail, one of the girls, and there was a whole big trend of parents cutting these hooks off and replacing them with glue straps. That is difficult for a topper because, okay, if you want to talk about safety, we can get into that, but in terms of performance, it's not a net benefit. And for me, it's not a net benefit because we have such a much smaller circumference on the boom that whenever we try and put a strap on, the strap holds too tightly and that outhaul doesn't function as quickly. So the hook for me is definitely the better option. It's up to a parent whether, they have that on or not, but in terms of performance, at least in my opinion, the hook is going to be faster.
And either is fine with the class rules?
Either's fine with class rules, yeah. Yeah. The boat still comes with a hook by default, and to get that hook off, you have to do this whole ordeal with this rivet at the end of the boom, which is absolutely terrible system, but a lot of people will tape them up.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that before.
But that's generally due to a more cautious parent rather than a performance benefit. The downhaul as well. The downhaul is only going to work in the topper sail if we have our foot line set correctly. I think there's a video later on of Polly and how a good example of why that's so important, because if we end up with a fold here, pulling the outhaul on has the opposite effect and makes the sail baggy underneath this line. We'll see that in a second. The new boats, I've had 3 boats with failures on brand new booms this year because of that first cleat. They seem to break all the time. They don't cleat properly. I don't know whether that's coming out of the factory by, I don't know who, Ronstan. Is it Ronstan maybe these days doing it? Not sure. But these cleats on the boom keep failing. Something to look out for. And as always, outhauls and toppers are notoriously difficult to change if you have a kicker on. Upwind all conditions, an inch off the boom or half a finger width is how I would like to say it. Survival should be bar tight. This gives them the best chances possible. And then downwind should be always a hand width away from the boom, so from finger to the back of the hand. Travelers, again, something slightly changed recently. Travelers should be bar tight. For me, they're the most important control on the boat. You'll see this one has been tied in a triangle, and that's great. I like to see a triangle being tied instead of having a pass through. But that knot should be back here rather than up here. The way I would always say it is the only way you should be able to get a rudder on your boat is for your parent to come over and do it for you. Because if you as a sailor are able to get the pintle attached by yourself, then that traveler's not tight enough and it's fully off position. It needs to be far enough off that when we release that cleat, this is still bar tight. I never allow parents to touch boats when on squads. It's a thing.
I was just going to say, I used to make parents do push-ups if I saw them setting up toppers.
So this is for me is the one thing that they can do without fear of retaliation.
Okay.
The new boats have a pulley block down on the toe strap.
Just wondering, even in the hi everyone, by the way.
Hi.
Even in the super light, you at that strength?
To an extent, I would say yeah. So you remember whenever we were, do you ever file down your rudder?
Yeah.
Right. So we file down the rudder. We should have that bit of metal filed away.
Yeah. Okay, and that helps it.
Yeah.
Us.
We're trying to encourage at the moment that whenever you have this on tight, to get to the end, you let your sail out with the kicker on. You push the boom out to make sure it gets attached, and that actual tension, even when it's super light, will keep it there.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So even like when you were sailing the laser,
yeah.
There, you let it out to get it at the end.
Okay, cool.
The new boats actually have a new block, so they have a block attached to the toe strap, and we can fix those to the old ones if we wanted to. I don't really see the necessity, but there's a block here and a handle, so you can now pull it from the base of the boat and add an extra purchase to put it through the cleat rather than going through this faff. But again, it doesn't stop a child on cleating it during attack. Leech and foot lines, spoke about this earlier. These are the hardest things to get a sailor to understand. In fact, I would say there's not really much point doing it at this level. The only problem is they have such an effect on topper sail that they need to be done. So generally, I will do it for them. So why this is needed, older sails just stretch more. As that stretches, the leech stretches, the foot stretches. We need to try and fix that by using these leech lines. What I'll do is I'll go behind somebody, take a photo, take a video, do both, and then I'll actually do it from the rib while they're sailing along, because they can't reach it from the boat because it's so far up in the back of the sail, and we'll work on that a wee bit. The foot line is obviously a bit easier to do. I really was just looking for, I'm not even sure I spelled leech right. I spelled it 2 different ways in that slide. Anyway, the lead should just have a minimal curl, and the foot should be enough that it takes out the middle curl. And we'll see a photo of that in a second. Yeah, so you see that here on the base of that sail, we have that fold. We want to pull on that leash line just so that fold gets taken out, and then we'll do it later. And then the leash line is slightly harder to see. I did a few wee bits of video just to give a quick overview of how much of a difference these controls make, and really the level that we're trying to teach at to get the foundations. This is a sailor at McIlwaine, yeah, who's I'm not sure if she listens to me or not, but anyway, you can see no, PowerPoint is not my friend today. The controls just aren't on enough. There's no downhaul, there's no kicker, there's no outhaul, and I've told her to put the kicker on. She hasn't perhaps done it enough as much as I would like. And she's sliding that boat. She's doing the Optimus pumps up and down, trying to keep it flat. She doesn't have the stamina to keep it forward, so she's just fighting against that constantly. And really, it's just constantly overpowered. The only thing I can say is good about it is that this downhaul is set up correctly. So we are it's right up to the top of the mast of the sail. And the boat actual components are pretty good on this one. She just actually needs to use them and stop doing this silly hiking style where there's one knee up in the air and get flat to the deck, because especially in girls at the moment, their hiking style matters so much in terms of longevity, in terms of your back. So getting a good hiking style, keeping the knees flat, backside up in the air, and attention in the core is more important than perhaps the sailing is at the moment. Better example of that is Luke from
County Antrim.
County Antrim, thank you. Who is in slightly lighter conditions. He has a very, very good bow setup here. So that's what we're looking for in all conditions in terms of the kicker strength, outhaul distance, and the leash lines are perfectly done. Now that is a brand new sail he had on, because that was immediately before the Worlds. So he was sort of bedding that in. So we can see the difference mix because we've got a small curl. And if we look up that edge, we have a tiny curl just on the outside of the sail. And kicker is pretty much at the perfect length, so that when it comes out.
Is it that the kicker rammed on that much in all conditions?
At the moment, yeah.
Oh, is that not destroying booms flat out?
Yeah. Well, how many? So, I mean, when I was sailing, I snapped 5.
Yeah, jeepers, that's crazy.
Yeah. The whole problem with this, the topper, and they've had it for years, is that this was a beach boat. This is like designed for doing nothing. You remember spending these booms where they're tiny. So with these new 6-to-1 kickers, when you pull that on, goes through a boom every year, every 2 years, no problem. There also is a difference with the sails, which is causing a bit more boom bend at the end, but we'll see that in a second. But yeah, it looks mental, and you have a lot of parents who don't particularly like it because they can see their money just spending away as well.
I know that's what I'm thinking here, because like, how do you tell even the kids at like Royal North or something? They come rocking up with a brand new boat, and I'm like, yeah, I want you to bend that to a snapping point. I don't even remember it. I think only really in my day, it was when it was properly hunted, you would see like that kind of bend. But yeah, that's what that new kicker has done.
Yeah.
It's been crazy kicker as long as I remember coaching it. That even in light airs to get it really cranked on. I think they changed the topper sail. When did I last coach? Like 5 or 6 years before I stopped coaching, and that's when it really brought in that you have to hammer on the kicker at all times. And for the parents, you say, do you want your child to win, or
yeah,
do you want them to keep a pretty boat, or do you want them to be competitive?
No, that's what they did. We'll go downwind then. So this is Charlotte now. Not Charlotte, this is Alex. So her outhaul hook had come off. Okay, it was bent out of proportion. I'm not going to say that's an advocate for the strap. And a really old sail. So there's differences here, but this is our sort of stereotypical club sailor, where we have a lot of going into the boat, and the boom just comes up because there's not enough kicker on, and that just causes the middle of that leech to fold in. When that folds in, it just becomes very unstable and a lot harder to manage. So whenever we have something like this, it's just trying to get the boat more stable for them and to stabilize it. Sorry, this is very distracting. My music, there's obviously recorded some music in the background and it's playing for the last 5 years, but obviously you can't hear it.
Nope.
Which is good. So that's possibly what we're trying to get rid of, because death run is the scariest part for a lot of kids coming into club sailing, possibly more than capsizing normally. I mean, I'm not sure if I remembers people. There were a couple of people who got concussed back when we were sailing. I'm sure Sheila remembers at County Antrim one year with a very, very specific big swell. No big waters. Didn't have a very good time, but that's a long time ago now. Cool. We had Emily in Pathetti last week, and this is an example of a better way to have your boat set up downwind. Now there are issues here as well. The kicker's on, sorry, not the kicker's on, the downhaul's on, and centerboard isn't up, right? So she hasn't been concentrating. But in terms of the actual sail setup and kicker strength, it's allowing her to basically put her force against this kicker all the time to pump those waves and steer down. Lots of things to do. This is the fifth exercise of this fifth race of the day, so it's still quite she's probably quite tired at this point, but they're in theory, that's sort of what we're looking for in these telltales, and that sail shape is actually quite good. The sail then. So I really hope nobody from Topper is ever going to watch this. There are some weird things coming out of Topper in terms of the sail ship. And twice we've had really weird cuts coming into the squad in this year where the leash is just probably about that short, much shorter than it should be. And it's like the sail's been cut wrong, because what we're having is they're pulling on the kicker, and you can see that mass bend on the kicker is quite strong, but there's no boom bend, and the boom's actually very high. And whenever we start doing that, we're starting to think, right, why is this actually happening? And I went behind her. You can actually play that leech like a guitar string. It's that tight. For me, that's a bad sail. I would be sending that back, because there's something wrong with that. And we had a 4.2 in the squad last year, and I mean, it was ridiculously short, this leech, that it should never have got out of the factory. So we're starting to see issues like that coming through, and that's why it's important, even when a kid who's just starting out gets a brand new sail or need a new sail, that they actually check it to see, is this what makes sense? Because you're no longer able to rely on it, and Toppers still aren't producing sail measurement numbers with the bags, which I think is a bit frustrating for a lot of people, because you wouldn't get away with that in any other class.
Is there measurement at the World, so they just all the sails are accepted as they are?
They tend to be accepted with the Topper logo. I can't remember if there are class rules to do with sail measurement. It's been that long since I've gone through it, but I don't ever remember my leech being measured as a kid.
No, I think it's just I'm just wondering what the class's fail safe is for it.
Yeah, I'm not sure there is one. I mean,
No.
this sail went through measurement, as you can see.
Yeah.
For me, that sail is not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it hard to coach, because effectively I'm having to tell her, right, we actually have to release the kicker tension, the kicker, because your leech is too tight and it's just stalling you out.
But it doesn't look right. The boom's high and all the rest of it, like you say.
Exactly. And there's this weird tension line at the top coming down from the crane. Don't know what that's about. There's panel stretch. Panel stretch has always been there. How much it's still having an effect on, I'm not sure. The bottom of the sails are still quite weird. Again, it's about getting a good sail and playing with that line. And then importantly at the moment is our joins in the mast. We need to tape them up now and pad them out, because whenever we're pulling on the tension, we're getting that crease, and that crease is actually quite mild there, because I told her to tape it up, but it obviously wasn't done enough. You can see it, massive changes now where it comes right across the sail. I don't know if that's always been there, Mary. Maybe you can correct me on that. Maybe something I'm imagining, but yeah. So it's important to keep that sort of taped up all the time. And the crane has gone. So there's no crane on top of the mast, so it's directly it's got a webbing strap that sits over the top, and that's a massive improvement in my opinion in every way. So I'm happy with that.
Nobody old enough to remember that you used to have a halyard on your mainsail in the topper.
No, Hammy
The
was chatting
whole
about
the
this the other
whole
day.
the
Oh
whole
dear, I
masthead
remember that.
the whole masthead would just be filled up with this terrible black line that was the main halyard. I never saw one used, Sheila, other than,
No, well, I'm the person who went on holiday in 1982 to Corfu and sailed a topper for the very first time. I'd never heard of it in Northern Ireland in 1982, but there we are.
Because the boat looks really different.
Yeah. The new boat.
Yeah.
Officially,
There's
no
no
difference.
gunnel on the edge of it.
So yeah, so there's no difference. Now, we haven't seen differences in results. Surely Luke Simpson surely didn't see a difference last year because he still did bringing out the Worlds, even though we had the old style boat. For them at this age and this stage, I would agree they're not going to see a difference. You have to be so much better to see a difference. I haven't sailed one myself a couple of times. Is there a difference? My opinion would say yes. It does tend to sit higher in the water. It does tend to go through the waves harder. And that's an advantage in heavy winds, right? A more rigid boat is always going to be better. The foil angle of the daggerboard is one of the ones that surprised me the most, is that it's actually angled up slightly at the back differently, or at least it is in the cockpit, which is really weird to look at because the daggerboard's sitting about that much up at the back. Really interesting. Not sure how it affects the boat just yet. And that rudder is about 3 or 4 centimeters closer to the daggerboard, which for me is a good thing because it feels like it's more connected. Everything feels more like a laser now. The baler in the middle of the boat, the kids are seeming to go through about a baler a year because it keeps standing on them in the middle of the tack. So even though they were up here, they seem to be out of the way. We didn't get stood on. Here they're getting broken all the time. And like Mary said, the edge lip's gone. The edge lip being gone and the fact that it's paired with buoyancy is a total pain for rescuing toppers. And I know that's a coach problem, but it's very difficult because what we're seeing is the toppers are sitting about that much further out of the water when we go over them. So the kids, if they're quite short, they can't get onto the daggerboard anymore because they're floating really high, even in the waves. And because there's no lip, there's nothing for a coach to grab onto to pull it up. And then so you get the kid in the boat, you're trying to ride it up, but because there's so much buoyancy, it's nearly trying to float itself on top of the rib instead of setting itself back down in the water properly. It's just more difficult, it's more frustrating for us, but I mean that's our problem, not theirs, sort of why we're getting paid. So you can't really complain that much. But it's an interesting one, and it shows there are differences between the boats in general. Build quality wise as well, I mean, they seem to be pretty reasonably built apart from some of the components. The hulls are really good. As far as I can tell, I've seen no significant issues with them. They can be ferried off quite quickly through scratches and stuff. It's just the components and things like the downhaul plate, the kicker cleats being extended so far away from that webbing strap. I don't think it's a really great design because suddenly, instead of having a downhaul start here, you have it start halfway up the mast, or you have the kicker start halfway to the boom, and that's not a great idea. You're just simply not getting the same solid component that you used to be able to have. But again, this is goes back to the whole thing that, when you pay, I suppose from a parent's perspective, you pay $7.5 grand for a new topper, which is a lot of money for a new topper. That you expect it to be built properly. Whenever it's not built properly, or whenever you see things and the coach tells you, right, okay, I would prefer you did this or reverse this cleat or do something else, that's going to cause a bit of issues. So I suppose there are ways we have to chat to parents about what is best and why this thing that you've bought from Topper who says it's like this isn't necessarily the best way to do it. There's preparation involved. So there always has been with toppers, but I would say
I was going to say, yeah, I mean, the boat that Luke was sailing for the last couple of years was a JMST. It had been previously awarded to someone else. He took it over. It's the year 2014, so it'll be 10 years old this year. But of course, the difference is he looked after it.
Yeah.
And that's really the key about any of these youngsters and their parents, just trying to make sure they actually value it and, take care of it.
Absolutely. Like I would have a second-hand boat every day, a second-hand well raced boat every day over one of these new ones, because it's actually being improved on what Topper say they've produced. That's pretty much it. I mean, the events are out for the year. If you have kids at your own club who are looking to do stuff, travelers, I'm sure most of us have been to a traveler with her, at some point, and then hopefully them seeing them at the youth championships next year as well. That's all I have for you. Happy to take any questions. You can always give me a ring after.
The Topper Traveller. Oh no, so I see what you've done there.
Do you think we should admit TC just